What's up everyone, my name is Josh and this is Josh Unboxed and welcome back to another video. And today I wanted to talk about how I do my research when I look back into cards from the 90s. I mean, as a kid, I used to collect in the 90s. I started collecting in 1989, 1990 with hoops, and I stopped in 98 when Vince Carter's rookie class came out. And that's where I stopped, and I didn't jump back in until 2012, I want to say. 2011, 2012. So I have a large gap from there. But growing up in the 90s and collecting cards in the 90s, I always felt those cards were really cool. Jumping back into the hobby, jumping back into the ultra modern and trying to jump back towards and look at opportunities in the 90s can be rather difficult. So one thing that I picked up that I feel has a ton of information is Beckett. Whether it's basketball, football, baseball, hockey, whatever sport you wanted to look into and you wanted to dive into 90s cards, I think these things are your best source of information. Now this one is a November 1998 issue. I opted to go for a later 90s issue because it has most of the sets on there. So that way, for me, when I'm looking into particular insert sets or particular cards or parallels, this thing shows me those insert sets, shows me the different types of parallels, and most importantly, shows me what the pack odds are for these cards. Now, I know you can go in online and just search pack odds for certain sets and stuff like that. And you can do that. You don't have to spend like the $5 or whatever online to buy a Beckett. You can just find the information online. But another reason why I really like the Beckett price guides is because you can look at what the prices were selling for back then. It's amazing just seeing how much these cards were going for back then. But at the same time, the value to be had in these Beckett magazines is more along the lines of finding which cards are still sustainable in terms of their value, or if cards have increased in value. Now, I know a majority of the cards in here, when you look at today's market and today's prices, they all have increased, right? But there's certain mainstays in here that we're trading at triple figures, trading at $1,000 or so. And if you find those cards, right, maybe those cards are good opportunities for long-term holds. If they were $100 cards back then, especially for the GOATs, greats, all-time players, then most likely those prices will be sustainable going forward and might slowly increase over time. So in terms of a long-term investment, I like to look at some of these cards and see which cards were the most expensive cards back then and kind of correlate it to how much those cards are priced now, and see if I'm able to get that card in whatever grade possible that is affordable, because I may see that card as an opportunity for long-term growth over time. I like using these things to do that. I also like to use it, like I said earlier, to search pack odds and see which sets were very tough pulls. If we're going into rarity, right? If the whole market, if a lot of the market is shifting into rarity, then if you want to dive into the 90s, it can be very, very overwhelming because there's just so many sets, right? And much like today's modern cards, there's a lot of sets, but the amount of insert sets out there in the 90s were just a lot. Like every set had like 4 or 5 inserts. Now, if you wanted to dive into rarity, then you want to find out what the pack odds were. If we're talking about rarity in terms of numbered cards, short prints, then if you want to dive into inserts, especially those in the 90s, then you'd be best served to kind of find out what the pack odds were for those cards. And get the checklist, see what players were in that set, see who are all-time greats, Hall of Famers and whatnot, and slowly pick those off one by one as you're going through. And you'll be surprised at how affordable a lot of these greats, their cards are, especially for these rare insert. The Beckett really helps out in terms of finding those gems within the 90s. And not only that, Beckett's make great bathroom reading material. So having something tangible to just sit there and just flip through and just read, I always find a joy in it. So yeah, this is how I do my 90s card research. I buy Beckett. I buy a Beckett, go online, buy one for like $5, less than $10, and I take the time out and just read it. Go through, learn the intricacies of certain sets, read the articles that are in here, because you'll find like great pearls of knowledge in here, and it's just cool seeing how things were back in the day, and at least it gives you a perspective of the overall card hobby and how it's evolved from during this time to now. And I think it just provides a great way to find value in cards. So if you're really into finding value or finding budget buys or looking for rare cards in the 90s, then the Beckett, I feel, is one of your best bets in terms of a tool for research. So what I want to do also is kind of turn things around. I'm going to show you guys a couple of examples, or give you guys an example of what kind of information you can see in these Beckett magazines if you've never seen these before. I mean, a lot of the new people who jumped into the hobby probably have never seen what the inside of a Beckett looks like. If you've been collecting from back in the day, you probably already know what it looks like, so it'll be a nice trip down memory lane, so to speak. So I'm going to turn things around and I'm going to show you guys some examples of what I'm talking about. So this one right here, this is 1996-97 Ultra Court Masters. Now this was an insert set in the 1996 Fleer Ultra cards, which was Kobe Bryant's rookie year. And you can see here, it'll tell you right here, Series 1 stated odds, 1 out of 180 retail. So this tells me that this card was very, very tough to pull. And you can see a list of players here, and you can tell here that Michael Jordan was trading at $150 at the time. So with that being said, it's like, man, maybe I could look into some of these cards of some of the other players in this set, like Shaquille O'Neal here, card number 14, who was trading at $50. Maybe this is a good opportunity to look at what his cards are going for at the moment. Maybe we could find some value on that. If you wanted to go into another insert set, you can look at this 96-97 Scoring Kings that came in two different types of versions. So there's a regular version, the Scoring Kings version, and there's also the Scoring Kings Plus version that was seeded at 1 out of 96. So the regular was seeded at 1 out of 24, and the Plus was seeded at 1 of 96. And once again, you can see the different types of players on here. You know, Michael Jordan being on there, Shaq being on there, Iverson, Malone, Weber, Kemp, Robinson. You know, you can find Olajuwon. There's so many different players on here that you can get. Let's find another example here. Here we go. This one here. Fresh Faces, 96-97 Fresh Faces from Fleer Ultra Series 1. Now this is a set of all the rookies from this class. And these were pulled at 1 per 72. So you can tell that this card was a very hard card to pull. And the biggest card in this set is, of course, Kobe Bryant. At the time was trading for 50. If you try to search this card now, I think it's going up around like hundreds of dollars, just because how difficult it was to pull and the fact that it was Kobe Bryant. Now you can look at these sets and you can kind of pull up pictures of them to see if they have that eye appeal to you and find out if there's a good value to be had for these cards. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to talk about the Beckett and talk about how you can use it to help fuel your research in terms of finding value, finding rare cards, finding cards that may have long-term sustainable growth. So if you guys found some value in this, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. And with that being said, my name is Josh, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.